Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of SuperNova Commencements. I'm your host, as always, Kashi, Sehgal, and we have an amazing show. I know that I say that every week, but I'm really excited about our speaker today. So let's get into our career powered by data segment that we do with our partner, Steppingblocks. Steppingblocks is actually a neighbor of mine where I have my office, and they have a ton of data on careers. So everything you could possibly want to know about careers, skill sets, schools, you should check them out. They have 100 million people worth of data. Today, our guest is going to be talking to us about the VC world, so venture funding, venture capitalism. What I looked up in Steppingblocks was venture capitalist, and it came up with VC and private equity. So a few stats before we bring our guest on board. The most common degree is a degree in business, also finance, so that makes sense. Average age of the industry is 37, so younger than we've seen in some industries, but being in and around startups, that probably makes sense. 42% female. And the top skills that most people in the VC and private equity space have are in startups, financial modeling, that also makes obviously a lot of sense, and mergers and acquisitions. So obviously you invest in a company to hopefully have them merge or be acquired. So all of those things make sense. I always get this question. So the skills that make the most are VC financing, so venture capital financing, private placement, which is kind of like a private funding model. So you pre-choose who your investors are, and then corporate development. So kind of like organizational strategy and things like that. Most people in the industry come from UCLA, Wharton, so the business school at University of Pennsylvania, and Stanford. So those are the top three, lots of other amazing schools, but that just gives you a snapshot of the landscape and what we're talking about. All right, let's get to our guest. Let me bring her on screen. Lisa Calhoun, welcome.
Great to be here, Kashi. How are you?
Doing well. Happy 2021. Everyone, Lisa is founding general partner for Valor Ventures, which is a fund that she started, and we're going to hear all about it and her background. So let's kick things off. Lisa, where are you from? Where did you go to school? What'd you major in?
You bet. So I grew up in Roberta, Georgia, which has a population of less than 5,000. It's Crawford County, middle Georgia. I went to Crawford County public schools through high school and was really fortunate. In order to go to college, I needed a scholarship. Needed a scholarship. So I did receive an academic scholarship through National Merit. I went to Valor University in Waco, Texas. And then a few years after graduation, I got my MBA in statistics from the University of Texas at San Antonio.
Cool. I also minored in statistics, so we'll have to geek out over some modeling at some point. Although I'm not sure I remember most of it.
It's really useful in VC, let me tell you. You gotta love your models.
Okay, so would you give us a high-level overview of your career path? So you minored in statistics, but how did you get from college to starting a venture capital company?
So, first thing I want everyone who's listening to realize, read the bios of great executives and great venture capitalists. Everything looks like it was so preordained, like it just stitched together so perfectly. And if you weren't on this perfect path, you would absolutely not wind up as this amazing executive who's running a big, beautiful business. But that's not how it actually happens. History is written after the effect, usually by the victor, right? So if you're a major executive, you can write your history to show the threads that made that path possible. But there are many threads. And so moving forward time, I very much remember what it was like for me as a senior in college, sitting on my dorm room bed, actually, because I was still in the dorm when I was a senior. And I was looking at all kinds of options in front of me. So let me lay you the scene. So my bed was not made up. I don't think it was made up all semester. I certainly now, but that's the way it was then. And next to my bed, this is really going to show my age. I'm 48 years old. There was a fax machine. This was 1994. It was my big Christmas present from my mom because I was running a small agency out of my dorm room, and that's how I made money. And so I got orders on the fax machine. So I'm sitting there, fax machine is quiet. I'm looking at a rejection letter. Well, not a rejection letter, but for me, okay, I'm looking at a letter from the Peace Corps I had applied to. And they told me that they would love to have me, but they would put me in Latin America. I didn't want to go to Latin America. I wanted to go to Russia or some of the Baltics because I'd studied Russian and it was my second major in college. So it was frustrating. I was reviewing options with the
Lisa?
CIA. They had recruited me and they wanted me to go to Russia, which was great. But the problem with that was they also wanted me to lie to my closest.
Your connection's going out, in and out just a little bit. Well, y'all, this is what happens with live, I can't say television, but live streaming. I think we'll get her back. Let's just give her a second. She's right, though. Careers don't happen in a straight line. And I've known Lisa for a while, and I did not realize that she had applied to the Peace Corps. Interesting things. I know one word in Russian. Spasiba, which is thank you. And that is thanks to my grandfather and my mom. So I'm sure I think I knew a few other words too, but I'm not remembering them off the top of my head. Yeah. Okay. It looks like we have Lisa back. Hi.
What happened? That was really odd.
I don't know, but I entertained everyone with my one-word Russian knowledge.
That you did.
Spasiba.
Very well done. So where were we when you had a good signal?
You were talking about not wanting to go to Latin America with the Peace Corps.
I really didn't. And then I did want to go to Russia, back to the Baltics. And I had that opportunity with the CIA, but it had conditions. And those conditions were I would have to lie to my family and closest friends pretty much forever. And that was a non-starter for me. And then I had this offer to go work at a very low salary at an agency in San Antonio, Texas, selling coffee mugs. Well, I didn't have the luxury of not working. And I had integrity issues with some of the other things I could do or thought it was my strength. And so I took that door. And that was my first job out of college, was working at a really small agency doing promotional branding specialty sales. And that was, it didn't last a year, but it got me into a city and into a professional work environment. And that brought me closer to things that I did enjoy, which were primarily technology. Before I even went to college, I worked in my parents' commercial print shop. So I grew up as a fourth generation entrepreneur working in business. And at my family's business table, at my family's dinner table, we would just talk about the accounts, the customers. After school, I would do work for customers. After about 12 years old, I would answer the phone, Calhoun printing, how can I help you? There's actually a pad of paper when I was really young, so I could check off orders and actually do pricing using a little worksheet, kind of before spreadsheets. So I loved business and I really loved tech. Our business, the commercial print shop, really relied on a lot of technology. So I got more into the technology side of businesses and started working in software development, program requirements gathering, enterprise software development, and realized that as a consultant, as someone who could help scope out what a business wanted the software to do. The business had no idea what software was, but I could help them set their goals around the requirements of the software and then work with developers to execute. So I ended up working with some companies like UPS, Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, UBS, also in enterprise software development. And I loved that. And I did that as a consultant for about 10 years. So that kind of takes you through my early career, and we're at about 30. So that's kind of the trajectory. And by no means was it clear what I would do, what I would be great at. I needed to work, and I loved to work in tech, but those opportunities didn't always present themselves to me on a platter.
All of that is so interesting, and I'm not surprised at all that you had an offer from the CIA. Like, knowing you and how smart she is, seriously, guys, it's not a stretch to be able to see that. So, okay, so you mentioned you come from a long line of female founders. What skills did you see growing up that you heard and you wanted to emulate? Like, what stood out to you about what you were seeing?
The primacy of cash flow. So in my family, the pantry was directly connected to the phone. Customer calls, orders processed. We were a production shop, so it would take us often weeks to get an order complete. We would have to order paper, perhaps order specialty inks like magnetic inks and things like that in the financial services industry. Put it all together, high registration, very technical material, and get it delivered. So literally everything in my family as I was growing up was, well, we can't do this until we have this much money. We can't have this much money until we have this many orders. We don't get this many orders until. And so I sort of lived the sales funnel at a very, peanut butter level. And so that stood out to me. And I think it stands out to me today. When I diligence a startup today, we talk about cash flow. And there are founders who want to take things to a very high strategic level and the theoretical model of the business. And that's just above my pay grade, even as an investor, because at the end of the day, valuable businesses are about creating value that results in scalable cash flows. And without that, the peanut butter and bread never gets bought. And I know that to my core.
Yeah, such an interesting perspective. So you have started several businesses. Could you tell us about, well, you mentioned the business that you started in college. Either that one, could you tell us about that one, or the first one out of college? But what is the skill set of a founder, do you think? Because it's not for everyone, and then that's also okay. But
well, I think that we make being a founder, we put it on a little bit too much of a pedestal. I think that if you want to start a business, if you can, you don't need anyone's permission but your own. You can start a business. If you can sell something to a customer, that's the core skill of a founder. What's the core skill of a founder is being able to sell something and collect. End of story. My mom used to tell me when I was earlier in my business, I would talk to her about some of the great meetings I had with potential customers. And at the time I called them customers because in my mind, I knew I could sell them. But my mom would say, honey, if they don't pay you, they're not your customer. And that was a hard truth because I really, really was optimistic, as founders often are, about who I could attract into my business. But that kind of approach helped me then and helps me now focus on to whom does one truly add value in business? Those people will pay you for it. And if they pay you, pay attention to them, because there is a relationship there that goes far beyond the transaction. And once there's a relationship and there's trust, you can often build those relationships further. And so that creating value, selling something, is the key skill of a founder. And frankly, 5-year-olds do it at lemonade stands every summer. So being a founder is not out of reach. And I don't think it's an esoteric skill set at all.
Yeah. And so, having seen now hundreds of, maybe more than that, companies,
right.
you talked about cash flow being a really important thing, but what are some of the other things that you would say are traits of successful companies? And like, what trends have you seen now that you're in the funding space? What trends have you seen over the last 5 years?
Well, to bring it to a student and young professional level, I think that jumping into sales situations is one of the key traits of a very successful founder. So to bring it back to my college years, hopefully they're still somewhat relatable. I was Waco, Texas. Okay, so Waco, Texas. I did not have a car. I had a bike. Remember, I'm a scholarship student and I needed that scholarship, but my boyfriend did have a car. He let me borrow it. That was wonderful. I would have probably found someone's car at some way in the pre-Uber days, but I would drive that car to the largest office buildings in town. And in Waco, it was like 6, go door to door, knock on the door, and try to sell them what I thought I had to offer, which at the time was ad placements in trade magazines. When I arrived at campus from rural Roberta, Georgia, and I saw the Valor Library, it was a little bit like, a trip to, a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. I was like, wow, I had no idea there were this many books, microfilms, and periodicals in the world. And I was thrilled. So when I read a lot of them, I would just, spend my evenings reading through the periodical section and seeing about all the subjects that I didn't even know exist and what people.
There was no social media distraction then, so you could actually get through a whole
1990 through 94. People were really good, but the internet brings that to your phone, so it's no different than mining interesting resources on the internet, truly. Mm-hmm. But there was the ability then to create advertising for all of these trade journals. So once I kind of reviewed in my mind a couple hundred of them, I went around to the businesses in Waco, knocked on the door and said, would you like an ad in this trade journal? I can make it for you on the computers in the library. I can send it to them and I will do that for free. They will invoice you for the ad. Would you do that? And generally they said yes. Not 1 in 5 said yes when I brought the trade journal to them. And, at that time, I knew from reading fine print in the backs of the magazines that the trade journal would then pay me a 15 to 20% commission on every ad. The average ad was $5,000 a page. So I made pretty good money with that business kind of on my own time. That was my very first business. Was it scalable? Not really. Moment time for sure. What are the key takeaways from that I think matter? Being willing to knock on doors, being willing to hear no, not being afraid of what's behind the door you don't understand. It's look at it as a learning opportunity. I also loved walking into those other businesses behind those odd doors in little old Waco, Texas, and hearing the stories of their businesses. If they would tell me, more than half the time, they were like, no solicitation. Okay, next, so I think being willing to take a risk, be a little socially uncomfortable, put out there what you have, and then iterate and learn from there are the key skills that young founders can go quite far with. That'll take you very far.
Lisa, how did you even come up with this idea? Like, did you have experience in marketing or advertising at all to know this was something you could make money with? Or how did you even investigate how to pick your business?
When you follow your passion, and one of my lifetime passions, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, one of my lifetime passions is learning. I love to learn. I try to learn something every day, and I bet I have that in common with most of you. So in reading these trade journals in the Valor Library, I found the small print in the back of the magazine curious, at least to read a few times, right? And so that's how I learned that these trade journal publishing companies would provide 15 to 20% commission on ad sales. And it just lodged in my head that every ad, I would be like, add it up. It's like there's $100,000 in commissions in every trade journal at that time. That was a lot of money. So thought, why not try it? I didn't know. I'd never met anyone that did it. I didn't realize that it was a regular model, just like a lot of first-time founders. I didn't realize it was a whole business. There were ad placement agencies, advertising agencies everywhere, and they all did that. I didn't know that. I really stumbled across it, but you can stumble across things. I think the key thing there is follow what you're passionate about. Just be you, be your weird, odd, geeky, abnormal, nerdy self to the max, and be very present as you're being yourself and what comes your way.
Such great advice. You have been now in the venture space for a while, and I'd love to get your thoughts on the diversity or lack of diversity in the founders being selected for funding. You started a nonprofit to actually address this. And so could you talk a little bit about what's going on from that perspective and how diverse funders can get involved? And actually, you know, as a young professional, if you're looking for funding, what resources you have?
So let me clarify the question. Give me the one question, Kashi. That was a whole mouthful.
Yeah, I know. So could you maybe give us your thoughts on diversity in the funding space right now and diverse funders or founders, I should say? Is the industry getting better? I mean, I know that it's been an issue.
You know, it's a moment in time, and the moment in time that we're in right now, 2021, founders of color and women together, it's pretty exciting. They are just over 50% of all founders, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. I mean, for one thing, the population of the United States under 40 is already majority multiracial or non-white. So you add to that women are 51% of the population, and it's a bit of a no-brainer. So that's exciting. And I really innovation out of when you look at the funding, we see that the financial services industry, the VC industry, has done a terrible job of funding equitably or even managing their own biases. So the VC industry decision makers are over 90% white male. And in addition to that, their track record of investing in women and founders of color are such that less than 5% of the billions of dollars of venture capital put to work in this country go to founders who are women and people of color. And so there's about a 40% gap there. What's really compelling to me is, you know, that gap, that opportunity is why I found 2016 and launched our very first. So that means a lot to me. I think that we have a lot of compelling founders in the portfolio today, and more are coming at us all the time. We back software founders in the Southeast.
Lisa, your connection's going a little bit in and out again, but we got most of that. Okay, so let's go to some student questions. Emmanuel would like to know what the favorite part of your job is.
The learning part. So every day I get to hear about new businesses, and personally I learn about 5 to 10 businesses every day. A lot of them come in through my email, which is difficult because that can be a really messy channel. Some of them are referred by people that know me and they think, oh, Lisa, you would really love this. But every day I get to learn something about 5 to 10 new businesses. And, you know, I get the financials typically, I get the trajectory, where they're headed, why they're compelled. And so the learning and reviewing the creativity of founders and the dreams they're building is my favorite part of the day. I love it.
So following on that, we have a few questions coming in specifically about funding. So Sid would like to know, how important is it to know the funders before you ask for money? He says he doesn't really know any, but he's trying to start the funding process. And the related question from Ashish is, how does he get in front of VCs, and can he send you his deck?
Well, you can
submit. Good for being proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. So y'all go to Valor, VALOR.VC. And then you'll see on the menu, there's this contact form. Fill that out. You can attach your pitch deck if you want to, an executive summary if you want to, but that's how you reach Valor. I mean, that is like our open door. And when you send us material that way, it lands on the desk of our team, and we have to review it within 5 days. I mean, we have like clocks and internal tracking on that. So we're all about reviewing what comes in through that channel rapidly. If it's outside of what we invest in, sometimes we don't answer because we can't answer all of it. So let me reiterate what we invest in. We invest in software companies who have not raised a seed round before and are headquartered in the Southeast. So, pizza parlors, salons, we're really focused on software from the Southeast built by founders who live here. And that first equity round, inside that's our strike zone. And we absolutely love to hear from you. So hopefully that helps. Regarding, do you need to know your funder first? You're going to have to know them before they can wire you money. That's for sure. So yes.
So I guess start networking, reaching out to LinkedIn. How do you reach out to someone in the funding space and say, look, I'm starting a company. I'm going to be raising some money. Can we just talk? Is that a good way to really make that intro and get to know somebody in that space? Or what would you suggest is that initial outreach?
I'd suggest that your initial outreach be talking about your revenue stream and some things that you learned and some things that you're looking forward to in your revenue for the next year. So if you don't have revenue yet, what that says is that you're not willing to go knock on customer doors. The first doors to knock on to really impress the VC are customer doors. So once you really know your customers and they've shown they know you because they're parting with money in some way, then you have a discussion to have financing people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, something a little bit more general. So Anna would like to know, what skill did you develop over the course of your career that you were surprised by? It's a good question.
Giving tough feedback.
Say that again, Lisa. I think you cut out.
Giving tough feedback.
Yes, that's a good one. That's not something you just are good at. You have to learn how to do that. Yeah.
You have to accept that you can't be liked for it. I mean, the hard part about learning to give tough feedback is not giving the feedback. And I mean, although there are some skills to that, there's definitely better ways and there's fair ways. And when should you give feedback? Sure, there's a lot there. But at the end of the day, when you have challenging feedback to share with someone, there's no way around it. They're not going to necessarily have any pleasure in that, right? And so being able to have truly difficult conversations, but necessary conversations. I think I went through at least a decade of my professional career not really having to have a truly difficult conversation. A missed deadline, not good, but not difficult. But when it comes to some of the levels and boards and engagements that I'm involved in now, there can be some really challenging pieces of feedback that need to be discussed and aired. And that's a skill I didn't realize I was going to need. I do need, and I look to continue to get better at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's an interesting question. Liana would like to know, have you ever taken a role at a company that hasn't fit into your long-term career plan?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the first job I ever took, which was selling branded coffee cups. Yeah, of course. Look, I have generally been in the position until very recently in my career at 48, where I had to make money. There was no nice to have. Like, I had no fallback. I couldn't move in with my parents, period. I had to make money. So when you prioritize that you actually need to grow and need to be uncomfortable and need to work for a living, you take all kinds of interesting jobs that don't suit you, but you need money. So my career, my year-long career, answering the phone at Domino's Pizza. So, did I love that job? I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, but I absolutely needed money for school. My first job at Pro Specialties in San Antonio, Texas, selling coffee mugs and branded logos for a year. I didn't like anything about that job, but it continued to get me out knocking on doors and learning about movers for other businesses. So I found something to like, even while I was working really hard to get a job I would enjoy in finance the next year.
That's such an important point, that like there is value even in something that you may not enjoy. There is some value in it. So find that nugget to be inspired by, because it's there.
It is there. The thing is, when I was a kid, I used to be told, well, if you're bored, it's your fault because you're not creative enough to find a way to engage yourself. I hated that when I was a kid, but it was true. And as a professional and as a career person, even making jobs, I've had jobs that were $21,000 a year. I realize that's like 1996 terms. That's still a very low paying professional job for a college graduate. I've been glad to have the job. And then it's on you to find the silver linings for yourself, even as you're working your way into something else.
Yeah. And you can create opportunity anywhere. And so I think we're also learning that from Lisa. Like, she went to the library and was like looking at the back of periodicals, which is a magazine or a journal for all of you who don't know what a periodical is, which is crazy to me. Yeah, right. And she invented a career for herself that she didn't know existed for herself before she saw the back of that journal. So, there is opportunity literally everywhere. So open your eyes and take a risk,
And take a risk.
Okay. Kristen has a question about nonprofits, because we mentioned the nonprofit thing. She says, I'm trying to start up a nonprofit, but the paperwork is confusing. And is there some place that she could probably get help with something like this as a student?
I have no idea.
Lawyers are expensive.
When I started my nonprofit, I filled out a form on the government website for nonprofits, and it was about a page long, and I don't think it was that difficult. But one thing you could try is not the work and just starting the good work until you can attract the help. So in other words, because you can't file your 501c3 doesn't mean you can't do charitable works. You can. You absolutely can. So if you get started doing those good works, it becomes easier to attract an attorney who will share a few pro bono hours, because you'll be able to say, we've done this. Would you please help me file for a 501c3? And I would go in that direction.
Great advice. Just start doing, right? The infrastructure shouldn't limit you being able to do the work that you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great advice. All right. So Tori wants to know what books she should be reading for her career.
I brought y'all one. This is called a book. It's paper. It's from the old days. I really read everything on a Kindle now. I really promise I do. But I had this one. It's called Getting Things Done. It's an easy read. And honestly, there's a lot of interesting books. I do publish a reading list for venture capital every year. It's on Valor's website at valor.vc. The most recent one is called the 2021 Venture Capital Reading List. If you're interested in venture capital, I would totally encourage you to go there and see what strikes you. However, in general, in terms of career, this book, Getting Things Done by David Allen, just kind of is a no excuses, clear the decks, focus, and it's really helpful. And I use that approach, have for years, and really appreciate it.
Awesome. I think that's a good one to end on. And We will obviously link to Valor's website in our show notes and to Lisa. So you'll be able to find those resources so you can submit your funding proposal and also find your book reading list. Okay. So all on Valor's website. Lisa, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing some advice for our students. Students, don't forget that we have a mailing list that you can sign up for. Please go to our website, supernovacommence.com. And we have grants and scholarships and internships and all kinds of opportunities for you. So get on that. You can find us on the web. Obviously, you know that. And yeah, Lisa, do you have any final parting thoughts for our students?
I think about advice I would have given my younger self at that age, and it would be to say, take risks. And a lot of people think, oh, take risks, like a financial risk, like should I afford my MBA and go into debt? No, take emotional risks with your career. Emotional risks where you put yourself on the line, where you have uncomfortable conversations with people outside of your network and get real feedback. You're strong, you can, and that's how you build the muscle. And I think that the great good luck in my life has been that I've taken a number of emotional risks in the business space, and I continue to do so. And it helps. And those are the types of risks that I think young professionals should focus on, is getting themselves out there. And it is hard, and I wish you well in that.
Such great advice. Thank you, Lisa. Students, next week we have Cynthia Hardy. She is founder and CEO of Pivot Global, and she's also an author. So we will be chatting with her. Have a great week. Make the most of the time that you have right now. It's a weird time. Some of you are back in person and some of you are still virtual, but there's a lot of silver linings. So look for those and remember to be safe and healthy and have a wonderful week. See y'all next week. Bye.